Hey guys, welcome back to the next video. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the important topics to start with. So this is the first video for this topic called workload management. In the workload management, we're going to see multiple sessions involving multiple different configuration for workload. Now, when I talk about workload, yes, of course, what I mean is that I'm talking about how to distribute your pods across your worker nodes. So we have two worker nodes. I think you're aware of it. So one is worker 1 and worker 2. And so far the workload has been automatic as in like whenever we deploy any pod or deployments, you can see that pods will spin across multiple instances in case of a replica on the pods or your deployments on a whole. And those pods will spin up either on worker 1 and worker 2. And I told you it uses the default workload terminology, which is by default configured within Kubernetes. But then if you want to customize the method of distributing these pods across the workload, across the worker nodes which you have or your compute plane, we need to understand about the workload management. So we're going to start with a very simple workload management called node name and node selector, in which we are going to understand these two architectures here. So this would be a very good introduction for you to get to know about all those other aspects of things before you go ahead and understand the complex ones. Now in this example, we're going to see about node name, specifying the node name as part of the pod creation. Now you can see this YAML file. It contains API version, kind pod, and you have the metadata over here, which talks about the pod name with the random name of a pod. And then in terms of specification of this container, you can see that's an Nginx image, which is getting downloaded through, I think, Docker. I think Nginx image is already there and downloaded. So here one new parameter which we have made part of your specifications is that it's going to select the node name where this particular pod will be deployed. So here we are manually selecting which pod we want to deploy this particular pod on. So in the previous examples, we have never selected in this situation where it will randomly choose either worker 1 or worker 2 and deploy it there. But in this scenario, I'm going to tell this, this particular YAML file, using the YAML file, I'll be telling Kubernetes that you should deploy this pod only on worker 1. So this is specifically giving a name of the, the compute plane where you want to deploy your pod 2. So that's the first one, which is the node names. And next one is the node selector. So in this video itself, I'll show you both because it's not complicated. So I don't want to create another video for this. In this example, we have another YAML file over here, in which we are using something called a node selector. Now, if you remember the selectors, we normally use it for labels, where we select an existing label and then deploy that into a replica set or deployments. So for that, we use selector. The similar way, we use a node selector over here. So the node selector says that whichever the node has the label of GPU : true, then you deploy this particular pod on that particular, worker node or your compute plane. Now, before we execute this, of course, we need to create a label because right now, none of your worker nodes has any label attached to it. So you will be using control label nodes and then the name of the node, which is worker 2, and then I set a value called GPU equal to true. Now what this does is that it sets up the value of GPU is equal to true for this particular node as a label. So you will see that label attached to it. When you give show labels, you will see that label attached to it. So we can see that the label attached to worker 2. So in this diagrammatic architecture, you can see that goes applies, and basically it looks for the node which actually has the GPU node true. Now, one important thing which I want to talk to you about is the communication over here. So When you execute a YAML file, will be executing through kube control apply -f, and then the name of this file content.yaml. So this is the exact scenario or exact file name we used to execute it as. Now, once this is executed, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go and talk to the API server, because that's the first item which you're calling over here, where it is going to load this API pod, name pod, and that's the kind it's going to choose. Now, once it has chosen this, it goes and puts entry on the etcd, because that's the main level configuration file, which is going to hold your entire level of detail of configuration, which is going to be part of your Kubernetes. So it's going to hold all the configuration. So it's going to go to the etcd and then come back, and then going to the API scheduler. An API scheduler will run the scheduling item for this particular pod, but it will run the scheduling for the pod which is having the node name of work. So it will go and talk to kubelet, and then it creates a pod on that particular compute plane node or your work node. So this is the exact way these guys work, and this is what we're going to see on the next hands-on video on towards how we are going to set your node name and node selection. All right, thank you again for watching this. If you have any questions, leave it on the question session. I'll see you on the next video.